All right, welcome back everyone to Poe Unplugged once again. And we are going to talk about one of the first, or I guess it could be the first detective story ever published. I'm going to say published because I won't say written because there could be more out there written. But we're going to talk about the murders in the Rue Morgue. So, welcome everyone. I am Jeannie Smith.
And I'm Carmen Bolden.
And we are
The
Potastic
Potastic 2.
Now, see, I led you on that one. Okay, so we have a special guest tonight joining us, Alex. I'm not going to butcher your last name, so you can introduce yourself. So if you have not already, we did a little interview with him on our Poe discussions. You can check us out either on our YouTube channel or on our podcast to listen in. He has some great information because he is a diehard Poeman himself. Hey, there's a new thing, Poeman.
Yes.
So, Alex, would you like to introduce yourself before we get started?
Of course. Yes, thank you very much for having me. Excuse me. I'm Alex Zavistovich. I'm the founder and artistic director of the National Edgar Allan Poe Theater in Baltimore. We're the only theater in the entire world that's dedicated to the adaptation of the works of Poe for the stage, for broadcast, and in schools for education. We've done some live broadcasts, but we've mostly, or live productions rather, but our claim to fame is that we've done, a couple of dozen now adaptations of the works of Edgar Allan Poe that are streamable on National Public Radio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Rhapsody. I mean, every time I turn around, there's another place. And the one that we just released on the anniversary of Poe's birth earlier this month was The Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. So I would invite everyone after this is over to just Google Poe and National Public Radio. We're the first hit, Poe Theater on the Air, and you'll be able to hear our radio adaptation, which runs about an hour in length. We did it live at the Pratt Library in Baltimore.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. If you had ever done a reenactment or adaptation of the Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're going to be doing all three of the Auguste Dupin stories. We're in the middle of getting ready for rehearsing for the next one, which is the Mystery of Marie Roget, which we will also be recording live at the Pratt Library. All of these are now, in addition to being available on National Public Radio, are now part of the Maryland Special Collections of the Pratt Library, which is the main library system in all of Baltimore. So we're very happy about that, and it's been a challenge bringing these stories in particular to life as a radio drama.
Oh, interesting. Is it just the adaptation of the turning it into more of a play, like the writing of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, to a lesser extent with Rue Morgue, but certainly with the Mystery Marie Roget, the device by which the story or the mystery is uncovered is through either interviews or newspaper accounts. Yeah. And as you well know, with Rue Morgue, I mean, there are like 15 witnesses, and each and every single one of them had an opinion. And I mean, you can't do like 50. Okay, we're going to have this particular radio show is going to have 20 characters. You just can't do that. So you have to find a way to take all of the points that are raised in these various interviews and compress them into one or two characters. And that's entirely the case with the Mystery of Marie Roget. That entire thing is told in newspaper accounts. So it's a challenge. Plus, they lack kind of the structure of a radio drama. And you can see how the Sherlock Holmes character became so successful off the back of Auguste Dupin, because Poe was the first person to create the modern detective story, and so he made all the mistakes, right? So everyone else could kind of go, oh, well, you really should have done this, this, and this, and then they did it, and then they get all the accolades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. That would do it. I mean, does anyone here, is this the first time you've ever read the Murders in the Rue Morgue? 'Cause I know Keith, you'd read it before, right? We
Mhm.
talked about it, yeah.
Yes.
And Leela, you did? Yeah.
Yeah, I've read it before.
Yeah. Will, what about you guys? And Micah and Holly, you've read it too, right?
I read it.
The last time I read this was the fall of 2022 when I was in Boston in Canada because I bought my Poe book in Boston. So
Oh,
Okay.
I reread the first 17 pages yesterday. I was going to read the rest of it again today, but I had some household chores to do. So, but I'm still fresh. I remember how it ends and all that. So
Oh yeah.
I don't feel unprepared.
yeah. So, oh, well. So, oh yeah, Micah also being a Sherlock Holmes fan, he had read it too. Because I mean,
Yes.
that's the thing. Most people, when they think about the detective that is all about, searching for clues and looking for forensics, everybody automatically goes to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes.
Hmm.
And then when you bring up Auguste Dupin, it's like, who? You know?
Yeah.
And I think this was the first one that when I read it, I was thinking, why does he have such a fascination with the French? That was the thing I was thinking of with Poe, because I'm like, the dude's American, and I know it's the early 1800s, so we are still kind of a melting pot of all different nationalities. But why is he so fascinated that he places all this in France?
Yeah. Well, he was
Yeah.
fluent in French, so with studying the classical works and studies and things like that. So I think it was a way that he could use some of his other skills besides writing, with the French aspect, maybe.
Yeah, but I guess one of the things that really bothered me is because if you think about in the Boston area and even in Baltimore and New York and those, there was not a lot of French influence, because most of the French influence you would find in New Orleans or more in the Midwest area, because they were mostly the Canadian coming down from the Quebec area. Now there were some in New York, but I'm just saying it was more because they were trappers. That's what in history points when the French started coming to New America, it was more they were working alongside and they were more the trappers and all that kind of stuff. They weren't as inundated, I guess, as the British. So I guess that's why I'm thinking, why I know he probably learned a lot of French, but why would you take that and turn it into the center of your setting? Is what I'm asking, because you know,
Well, I
you know,
Yeah, I mean, if I could venture again, first, I mean, keep in mind that Poe actually attended boarding school in England when he
Hmm.
was younger. That's where he learned not only the Romance languages, but Latin and some other languages. I mean, part of it is really that he just thought that France was an exotic locale, and
Yeah.
the people in America were a little bit more still, as we all are still, smitten with Europe, things of European nature. I mean, I don't know about you folks, but I'm still a sucker for a British accent.
Yes.
I mean,
Me
I
too.
agree.
so, so and he was not beyond sort of rubbing up against the things that he knew would sort of elevate his reputation. So if he positioned himself as kind of, oh, look how cosmopolitan I am, I can write about France, I know all this, it's hard to make a living off as a freelance editor and writer. So you'll do what you can to try and create sort of a uniqueness about your work. So
Absolutely.
rubbing up against the French was probably a good idea.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, at the time, right, it was all the English or the European authors that were getting all the attention. So he was trying to be like, oh, I'm an American author, but I'm just as educated as these other authors you're reading.
Yeah.
And from the American perspective, like Alex was saying, at least for me, every time I read a book that's set outside of the USA, it always seems so fantastical to me. And I'm like, is this book seem like this to people who live in these countries who see these things every day, the language, the names of the street signs? And I'm like, kind of, it's like, you know what I mean? It just gives it, like, I don't think his intention was to make it seem like more fanciful or more like fantasy like, but it does give it a sense of like, well, anything can happen in a foreign country.
Right.
Yeah.
Including a orangutan guy. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, let's just toss an orangutan in there too, because we know they're just running around the streets of France,
Oh.
Yeah.
hanging off the Eiffel Tower. Because I'm like, this would be the equivalent of King Kong hanging off the Empire State's Building. We got the orangutan, swinging from the Eiffel Tower. So, like, really? Come on. Okay.
Oh. Hey, maybe that was an influence for King Kong. You never know.
There you go. Could be. You never know.
Oh.
That was the thing, but yeah, it didn't dawn on me until the first time I went to New Orleans, and I actually saw the signposts in New Orleans that say Rue, and I went, what? Why is that on a New Orleans signpost? And then it just hit me because Rue is French for street, so duh. So that's why I'm like, hey, you want to get a little bit of French influence and you can find probably some murder, just hop on down to New Orleans, people. I don't know about the orangutans though. You'd probably find more of vampires
Vampires.
and yeah,
Yes. Okay, don't.
and
And
all
this
those.
is totally off topic, but I have to share this real quick snippet. I was woken from a dream last night, that I was turned into a vampire by Bela Lugosi. So just to let you know, I didn't sleep well last night. So just throwing that out there. And okay, anyway, let's move on.
That's a little much, you know.
Yes.
Well, Bela Lugosi did do the movie.
Yes, he
It
was in the
that
first
movie, so it could have been.
adaptation. I know. Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Yes.
At least you weren't dreaming about getting attacked by orangutan, but okay.
That's very true. That is very true. And
Which-
Will says, does his charm transcend the ages? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I follow his
vouch for it.
Instagram for my Bella pictures.
Yes. All right. Anyway, back to the story. Just had to throw that out there since vampires were mentioned.
Yeah.
But
Carmen and I were discussing before you guys got on here about the movies that have been adapted for these, and we were like, I mean, she was like talking about the one with George C. Scott, and that was 80 something. And then I was saying, well, I'm more apt for the Bela Lugosi one, that I just like it because it holds a little bit closer to the story for me as far as the narrator and some of the more apt of things. Of course, it's fantastical in certain areas, but like I told her, I said the thing I didn't like about the George C. Scott one was because, Val Kilmer, they actually made him a more, fleshed out character, where that to me
with a
you
name,
don't want with a name and stuff. But Poe likes to leave that mystery, and when they did that, they took away the mystery of the narrator for me.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting perspective, because that's one of the things that we found to be a shortcoming in the Poe writing, actually, which is why my speculation all along was that's why Sherlock Holmes ended up doing better as a character in literature than Dupin, because I mean, here you've got a person, not an omniscient narrator, literally the guy's roommate, and three stories go by, you don't even learn his first name, and you don't know anything about their relationship except that they stay up until the middle of the night and then go carousing and trying to solve crimes. And it's like a buddy caper where you only have the name and identity of one buddy. But when Sherlock Holmes comes around, all of a sudden you've got James Watson. He's got a backstory. The two of them have a relationship. Mm-hmm. So when we started doing the adaptation, the first thing we did was, look, we have to have actual characters for these unnamed characters. Otherwise, what have you got? You got one guy who doesn't have a voice. You've got the police prefect that's just one initial. Really hard to build a relationship with that. So it's interesting that for you the anonymity of the narrator was actually an attraction. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that. So what is it about that sort of like the anonymous narrator that you felt was compelling?
Well, it builds more of a mystery to me because by not giving the details or the background, you can kind of live with maybe, during the story, especially when you're trying to figure out, well, who caused the murders, who did the murders. You can actually build the narrator with no voice or no identity as being, is he the killer? Is he part of this process? Is he more involved than he should be, or is he just one of those things that many people, when you walk down the street, you walk by, you see them, but you don't really notice them.
Yeah.
You don't know what
Yeah.
point they play in the world.
Hmm.
I've even saw some research done that in the police have done that say that at one point in time you're passing maybe a killer on the street and they're just normal people, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I
That's
guess because I like building the character in my own mind
Hmm.
and going along with it that way, that sometimes I don't like it when people tell me too much, I guess is how I'm trying to explain it.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
I like having a name to the character, but I think that because he is so ambiguous and unnamed, it allows the reader to insert herself or himself into the story, and
Hmm.
we, the readers, become that character, and we're there
Yeah.
with Auguste Dupin solving the crime with him.
Yeah, I kind of lean, Jeff, more towards that aspect where I'm placing myself in the story as kind of the narrator. One thing that I know, I listened to this part this morning on my way to school and then the rest of it on the way home. One thing I noticed that I hadn't really, I guess, paid that much attention before, and it was just one little line when the narrator is talking about moving in with Dupin, and he says, I had to look up my note. He says his former associates don't know his whereabouts. That makes me wonder, again, he's an unreliable narrator because, we don't even know his name. And is he running from the law? Is he, hiding out? Who is he really? Based on just that one little line. And so I thought that was just kind of really fascinating because I had not picked up on that before. It may mean nothing, but it's like, does that tell us more about the character than we think?
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts?
Well, I guess for us, and we're committed to going down this road now. We've written all three scripts, so we've got a narrator, and he's got a name.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome.
But what for us, as we were talking about this, I guess the idea came to mind. I don't know if you or any of your listeners know the show Monk, or there was another show called Psych on television.
Oh,
where
yes.
they're like unofficially attached to the police department,
Yes.
and they have kind of an abrasive relationship with the police, but the police grudgingly understand they can't really do much without their assistance. So in each of those cases, and as well in the case of like Sherlock Holmes, the narrator is a facilitator for the detective. The world is not user friendly for these detectives in general. They're just very, they've got such big brains, and they're just trying to put connect the logical dots that a lot of the niceties of polite society can slip right by them, or they challenge those things because of some innate sort of disrespect for authority, I suppose. So we kind of took that and ran with it because we realized if we were going to do a series of these programs, they're all interconnected, then it would be nice to be able to have a through line where you get to know each character better. The stakes for each one means something taken as a whole, and they develop as the underlying themes, but the mysteries are really the main points in each case. So so you learn a lot about the narrator and the relationship that he has with Dupin as we go. And as I say, I think for us it was good to have someone kind of facilitating things for the detective, because as I said, otherwise the world's not all that user friendly for them. They just,
Yeah.
True.
That's a good way to put it.
And what name did you give to the narrator?
Well, so that's an interesting story in itself. The narrator's name is Zach Yeager. And the reason that is because the Poe Theatre worked cooperatively with a couple of universities in the UK. They did a series of radio dramas. It was called The Media of Mediumship. So they did 3 1 hour long radio dramas exploring spiritualism and phenomenology in like 19th century England. And they asked me to voice a character and actually produce those shows. They're available on YouTube.
Okay.
And the character's name was Zach Yeager. And at that point, we were still in the process of writing the detective stories. And I said, well, why don't we create our own kind of version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? So we're going to have him, Zach Yeager, be the narrator for Dupin. He has his own thing going on in England, and there's sort of like a crossover, midway through. So it's an improbable name, but it's all because somebody asked me to play that character. So.
Okay. That's cool.
That works. And it fits with the mystery crossover kind of thing. And that goes back to what I'm saying. It's not that I have a problem with people naming the narrator or anything. I just have a problem when they give me too much, that it takes the mystery away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like when Bela Lugosi's movie, the narrator guy, the one that was living with him, you see him and you're going, oh, yeah, he kind of reminds me of the roommate you had in college that always loved to skip classes and just hide out in the dorm room and just, hide from everyone and hated anything. Or
Jeannie, are we sure you're not talking about yourself?
Well, there is that too, but
Self-projecting.
I kind of identify with that because I would hide out in the dorm room because I didn't like people. I still don't like people. I became a teacher, and I even told my kids one day, Miss Smith, why are you always hanging out near the door or the window? I said, because I feel claustrophobic because I don't like people. And they're going, why are you a teacher? I said, I ask myself that every day.
Oh.
I saw a meme on Facebook that says, I want a leaf blower, but for people.
Yeah.
Exactly. That'd be my meme right there.
One of the interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was going back to sort of like not the comment that you had about not having people like spoon feed you too much, not having them give away, tell the stories too much. It was interesting when we were doing our radio drama. And by the way, please, everybody listen to it. I think you're going to like it.
Oh, yeah. I've listened to multiple of your other ones, and they're fantastic. So definitely check these out.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that was really interesting about having a narrator who's sort of more participatory in the story is, like, if you'll remember, the whole deduction portion of the story is just reported after the fact to the narrator from Dupin. He goes out and he does his own thing, and he comes back and it's like, oh yeah, I found this out and this out and that out, which is great. But if you have a more active narrator, we do an entire scene where the evidence is being gathered at the scene of the crime by both Dupin, mostly by Dupin, with with the narrator kind of sitting around scratching his head like, how the heck did you know that? But being able to sort of uncover the deductions in real time and seeing that all happen, as opposed to just like reading about it kind of after the fact in the story, was fun it was a lot more fun to write, but it also creates, I think, more interest as a play, than it would if you're just sort of like, two guys sitting around the table, and then I saw this, and then I saw that.
Mm-hmm. So that makes perfect sense. It really does, to do it that way.
But we still. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, it brings up the idea that I've always adhered to that Shakespeare's plays were meant to be, acted out, not read. So it's kind of like if you're taking something that was written where it was giving you more of the irony of feeding you the story rather than the dramatic irony of seeing it happen.
Right.
So
Well,
that kind of makes a difference.
You raise an excellent point. I mean, an old colleague of mine pointed out that theater is meant to be listened to rather than watched. That's why the people in attendance are audience rather than spectators. So it's interesting that you need that kind of audio component to make the rest of it make sense.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Micah shared Jaeger, Zach equals YZ equals stands for year zero or origin story. Coincidence? I think not. That's very clever.
Yeah, that's a lot of steps to put together in your head all at once. That's pretty great.
That's like a math problem.
It's like a Poe cryptogram.
Yes.
Yeah, Alex, I have a question. Since you spent all this time writing out the script, which I will totally check out, I had listened to your interview with Carmen and Jeanie, and I forgot that this was available to listen to by now. But I saw a while ago your Blood, Sweat, and Fears Edgar Allan Poe play that you put on.
Oh, yeah.
And it was insanely amazing. We actually quote some of the lines in my family. It's actually become like a staple to say some of the lines. So that's just like the exquisite food, like some of the lines in that we just love. So is there a chance when you get your home base that maybe you would actually act it out now that's a script kind of?
You mean act out Rue Morgue?
Rue Morgue, yeah, right. All the mirror mysteries.
We'd probably have an easier time acting out Marie Roget. It's not something that we've said no to. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you've got when the murderer is an orangutan, it's kind of hard theatrically to build it in because then the character has to be sort of indicated rather than be on stage. We don't want to have somebody in an orangutan costume, pretending to kill
making it cheesy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that one in particular is a little hard to bring to the stage, but we haven't ruled it out. We just haven't quite figured out how to do it. I mean, the others were, a challenge in their own. We saw the show, so it's not like those stories were necessarily easy to put on.
They were excellent. Like your presentation with the narrator, the doctor. I mean, honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect.
Oh,
it
good.
was well worth the drive. We went for your last night because I saw in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
I brought the whole family. It was a blast.
Oh, good. Yay. Good.
Like seriously, I want to see it again.
Oh, we're thinking about restaging it smaller so that we can do it in smaller spaces. We don't need like the projections and things like that. We could just use standard signage, but we want to reduce the size a little bit so that we can play in spaces of all different sizes.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Good.
But it's a great idea to do the Dupin things. I think that I've been a fan of the stories for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
That would be cool.
And you are planning to do the purloined letter too.
That's the last one in the series. Yeah, exactly. So in fact, there's a good friend of mine is a professor at the University of East Anglia in England. He's the one that wrote the Zach Yeager radio plays that this. So he's writing the Purloined Letter. He also wrote a lot of the adaptations that we've already got on public radio. He's really great guy, very creative. And so, yeah, that's going to be the one that rounds out the series.
Oh, cool. Dr. Jeff shared the name Yeager reminded me of the Dark Shadows character, John Yeager, a Jekyll and Hyde criminal. I don't think I'm there yet, Dr. Jeff.
I thought you might be. It's in 1970 parallel time.
Okay, I'm not there yet. I'm still a little ways away. Leela agreed. And Jeannie says, love that, Dr. Jeff. Or Dr. J.
Yeah, Dr. J. Well, of course, when you talk about Yeager, I have to think of, Chris Yeager or Chuck Yeager, not Chris.
Yeah, I was about to say, who's
Yeager.
Chris?
No, that's another character from another book I read far too long ago that I can't remember what it was in. But yeah, Chuck Yeager, and I'm thinking, oh, the Wild Blue Yonder. Yes. Okay. So yeah, we're getting way into the new world.
Yeah. Well, so what other elements of the story did you guys like, dislike? Any thoughts?
I found it humorous that all of the eyewitnesses thought that one of the voices was either Russian, Italian, French. Everybody had a
Yes.
different opinion, and that's true. You know, when you ask different people, describe the car wreck or describe the whatever, and you get wildly different accounts.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
not only did they give you these wildly different accounts and they attributed them to all these different foreign languages, but when pressed, they all conceded that they didn't know what those languages were.
Yeah.
They just knew that it didn't sound like French, so it had to be something else. So,
Oh, yeah.
the fact that it could have been an orangutan making vocalizations didn't occur to them.
No.
But yeah.
Well, the most interesting part is that this was something else that Poe was ahead of his time about when it comes to eyewitnesses to any type of criminal activity. They
Mhm.
only use eyewitness testimony when it's absolutely necessary, but the amount of cases that hinge or are convicted on eyewitness testimony is 40% or less because it's just so unreliable.
Yeah.
So once more, you got the unreliable narrator, but at the same time, you've got the unreliable witnesses.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody can see different, different colored ties or hear different colored voices, or the guy was 6 feet, the guy was 5 feet. It was a woman. No, it was a man, blonde hair, blue eyed, who goes, but that's the thing. He's bringing in some forensical evidence that like the fingerprints or other things that are coming into play that have not really been proponent of any kind of investigative techniques.
Yeah.
So that's another thing.
Yeah, I mean, he's fascinating in that regard. And so many firsts for Poe. Like the gold bug was an interesting story because that was the first time that a cryptex was used, or a code system was used in any. That's arguably also a detective story, I suppose. But
Yeah.
yes, so many firsts. Poe was interestingly, Poe was not just a man of literature, but he was very interested in the hard sciences as well.
Yeah.
I don't know that many people realize that one of his best-selling books during the time that he was alive was actually a nonfiction book about seashells.
Yes.
So, yeah, so fascinating.
I have a copy of it, but I haven't read it yet.
I don't. You've got your one up on me. I don't even have a copy of it.
Yeah, I just decided one day to order it. I was like, I want to see what this is all about. And I have a stack of books so high. I'm reading like 5 books at one time. Here's this in the morning, this in the evening, that kind of thing. And I'm eventually going to read it because I'm very curious about it.
Yeah.
It's in my to-be read stack too.
In Mark's book that he did, the murder. Oh, I'm sorry, Keith.
Oh, I just was agreeing with her that my copy of the book about the seashells is in my to be read stack too.
Okay.
One of my to be read stacks.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to misquote Mark that was on here with the Miss Murder and Miss. I'm just gonna butcher the title of that. So go ahead, Carmen, you can say it. The Mysteries and Murders of Edgar Allan Poe. But I think he goes into saying that it was more of that he edited it for money than he actually wrote it. Because I know he did a lot. I don't want to misquote the book. Right. So I've also not read it. I think he was more of an editor that he put his name on there. I came back to bite him in the butt. And he talks about that a little bit in that book, that it was more of like editorial. He changed a couple of things, and that this other scientist was actually the one who wrote it. But again, you have to ask Mark. Don't misquote me on that because I'm not like a Poe scholar.
Yeah, Mark did talk about that. Yeah, he definitely did.
But I think what was interesting about the Rue Morgue, at least my favorite part, I think it goes to like a big theme of like things aren't always what they seem, down to the murderer. And I think the part that I enjoyed the most was the fact when he goes look at the 2 windows, and the one window, even though it looked like they were closed, to the eye, there's no way they could get through, but the nail head was broken inside the one. And to me, that's like such a great little fun moment for the reader, because most of us would just be like, go check this. And you're like, say that you're the detective on there. You're like, yeah, the window's nailed shut. So it's kind of that perception of things aren't what they seem. And I feel like the whole story kind of really plays on that from the beginning. Even the characters themselves, the Japan character, things aren't really what they seem. With the mystery around him, why he doesn't have money, the weird narrator living with him, to the money isn't there. It doesn't make sense. Like, why would someone leave all that gold there? So it kind of plays on one of those like tropes in writing. Like old school. So it was cool.
Yep.
I agree. And also, too, just the whole locked room murder. Not only did Poe invent detective fiction, he gave us the first one was a locked room murder. And how many times has that been redone? With Sherlock Holmes, there was one, Agatha Christie did one. I mean, and then just all the other authors, who knows how many, have used that locked room trope, I guess would be the best way to say it. Yeah. It's just so cool.
I just thought it was cool that it was an orangutan.
Yes.
I got,
I know.
I was so tickled when I got to that part. I'm like, well, I'll be, because I'm like, well, this is original. I like this.
Yeah.
That was the subject of some controversy. There, obviously, there's like you can't turn around without somebody being, feeling that something's controversial. But for a while, there was such controversy about the fact that the murderer was an orangutan, and that some folks pointed to that as possibly being like some sort of a racist statement. And you can see plenty of documentation about that online. But really, and without getting into the whole issue of racism, I just think that in Poe's case, I mean, the first instance of an orangutan being sort of presented to the Western world was in 1833, right? So the whole idea of Borneo and orangutans and all that were still so new that I think in this case it was just, Poe's really weird brain that said, all right, I need an impossibly strong, crazily nimble thing that's going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
Let's just make it an orangutan, because it was so completely out of left field.
I agree.
But it is, there is controversy around it. I just don't think that, like I said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, I think.
Yeah.
That angle didn't occur to me, but I did read that some readers were disappointed that the culprit was non-human, and they looked upon that as a cheat or something.
Interesting.
But I don't agree with that. I think that it's just, as you said, wildly original. And people knew that much of Poe's writing is fantastical. So this, ties in with that, that the murderer is not human. And then, of course, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle used that too with The Adventure of the Speckled Band.
Yes. Absolutely.
So,
and it's you have to, I guess, to a certain extent, Poe painted himself into a corner in that he was able to create a logic whereby someone could make it appear as though they've come in and out of a locked room. But when the logic was, well, you scale a lightning rod and then grab an open shutter and then swing in. I mean, you're talking about a lot of space. They didn't put a lightning rod like 1.5 feet away from the building. That's out in the middle of a courtyard. And they still have to be able to jump from that and grab a shutter. When you get down to that point, it's like, I can't imagine any human being able to do that. So now you're automatically putting yourself into, it's going to have to be something like an orangutan.
Yes. Or if you modernize the adaptation kind of with the Zach Yeager in the multiverse, you can create, orangutan man. Sorry.
Or a robot or an android could have done it.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to throw my husband under the bus, because he was actually one of the people where he was super disappointed that it was an orangutan. He was just like, I'm really disappointed in this. And to be honest, I wasn't here or there. I kind of remember the first time I read it, I think I actually did a shoulder shrug to it. All right. Because he created this fantastical situation, so he needed some fantastical answer, essentially. So I was just like, okay, well, he explained it. It makes sense. But, I mean, would I have been happier if it was someone else, a person? I don't think I would have mattered to me because you didn't really get to know any of the characters in the story enough to be invested in them as innocent or guilty.
True.
So for me, it was this kind of like, okay, cool.
Some readers want to have a fighting chance at being able to figure it out, though. So you can't like lead them. They're right there with all the deductions, and they're following it, and then all of a sudden it's an orangutan. It's like, well, how could I possibly put those dots together? So.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
and
on that aspect of it, I'm gonna have to say that you were talking about how we're always expecting certain things. We're always trying to figure things out. But that's one of the things that Poe was very good at, is like, you should not expect what you're expecting. These things are not, you're expecting it to be a man. You're expecting it to be someone with a motive, that someone that actually has a reason to want to do this deed, but you're trying to figure out how did it happen. But at the same time, as human beings, we all are wrapped up, and sometimes we get so tunnel visioned that we only see what we want to see. We
yeah,
only hear what we want to hear. And that was one of the things, especially with this story, when he's, at the very end, it comes up to being an orangutan. Everybody's sitting back going, huh?
yeah,
What? Because he's smacking you in the face with, it's one of the things that you would never think of, because that's what
Yeah.
you have to do when you're looking at these kinds of things. You have to not fall into that crack of it has to be this. You have to see outside of the tunnel.
Yeah. I think too that in the George C. Scott adaptation, they had the clerk, because they, the mention in the story of the clerk bringing the money to, how do you pronounce the lady's name?
Madame L'Espanaye.
Yes, Spania. The clerk brings the money, and they kind of add that character in to kind of, put blame on someone that's human. I think they did that for people that haven't read the story, maybe to kind of give that illusion of something else.
Right. And also, in a way, it was sort of a literary device that explained why Dupin wanted to take such an active interest in solving this thing, because everybody was pinning it on the bank clerk Adolphe Lebon.
Yeah.
And it's hardly mentioned at all. It's just that he did that. Lebon did some favor for Dupin at one point, and so he feels an obligation to clear his name. We actually in the radio drama, we actually at the very end we explain what that favor was. It's not a very good favor, but he needed a reason. He needed some motivation to get in and get active. So in a way, it's almost like you had to have a falsely accused person to be able to create the stakes whereby Dupin gets involved because he wants to clear someone's name.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just thought it was brilliant. I just remember when my English teacher assigned me a totally different reading list because I had read everything from the summer reading list and I was ahead of the kids in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went ahead with reading, but I couldn't wait to get back to there on Monday to see Ms. Mosley. I was just like, it was brilliant. It was an orangutan. How original. Isn't that great?
Oh, yeah. I can remember reading it and going, hold on. I've read several Agatha Christie books, and this was I was probably 13, I think. And I was like, wait a second. Poe may be better than Agatha Christie, because at this point, obviously we have no computers. We only know a lot about what I'm studying in school and what the teachers tell us. And so I was like, I asked my parents to take me to the library because I'm like, I need more of this.
Yeah. I remember reading it the first time. I have the same reaction. This is going to sound like heresy considering, I'm the founder of the Poe Theater, but to me, I have a lot of the same kind of problems about Poe's writing, which that it takes him so long to build up to where he actually starts, Like, I don't think we needed 2 pages of the logical explanation for why he made a pronouncement about an actor at the very beginning. We get it. He's good at putting the pieces together. Let's get to, but to me, it just sort of I can't help but feel that Poe is probably just paid by the word, so because you get that whole section, while being interesting, I suppose, is still so irrelevant to the rest of it that it feels kind of like, well, I just put it in here because I need to up the word count a little bit. He does the same thing in Berenice. Is like, my given name's Aegeus, my family I'm going to speak no more of. And then he proceeds for a page and a half to talk more about them.
Yes.
I don't know whether maybe people back then had more of an attention span, because what else was there to do to entertain yourselves? But
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, I only have one thing to say. Some words with a mummy.
Oh gosh. All right,
Well,
Jeanie.
and he starts the premature burial with news items about people buried alive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes.
I just realized Poe was like the written version of the news today, where they talk about everything that you really don't want to hear, or they talk about it for an hour and a half before they actually get to the good stuff.
Right.
So he was ahead of his time on that time. He was the early version television of news.
That's true.
Yeah, and I don't want to give any spoilers away for Marie Roget, for people that are going to watch and listen to this later, that are not in our group, but Marie Roget in the Purloined Letter. But he did some things with those two stories that are definitely kind of first with taking I don't know how much like true crime and creating like historical fiction out of it.
Yeah.
And then the Purloined Letter hiding in plain sight. And I'm not going to say anything else about that.
Right.
So, but we plan on reading both of those stories at some point. I don't know if it'll be, hopefully it'll be later this year. Jeanie and I haven't gotten past May. Yeah, we've planned through May. So
great.
You're my calendar.
By that time, we'll probably have Marie Roget available on NPR, so maybe we can come back and talk.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that would be great. Definitely.
That's my favorite of the three. I know most people say Purloined Letter, but I like Marie Roget the best.
Yeah, really? It's a good one. They're all so good. It's hard to almost pick a favorite for me. I like all of them for different reasons.
Yeah, Marie Roget, I think, is the closest for me, because it fits with many of my particulars. When I was taking criminology, my subject area, my topic for my thesis was serial killers. So, that was where most of my degree was centered upon, and all this. And so reading real life case studies, I would always try to find things that fit with what the real life was. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting that Poe, being that early on, and yes, there was serial killers, basically the biggest one of them all, that's Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
So it just, that's why it fascinates me. And I think that's why the Murders of the Rue Morgue was so interesting, because it was so not normal. I hate to say that there's a normality to crime, but unfortunately there is when it comes to murder. To some extent, there's always the outliers.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was fitting the profile before there was a profile. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Definitely so. Well, any other thoughts on Murders in the Rue Morgue that y'all have?
I wonder if Poe had planned to write more than just these three stories, if he had any ideas, or if there was public clamoring for more of the stories.
I would love to know that.
Here's what I found.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. I mean, he should have it should have, in my opinion, since it was being posted in a magazine, it should have become a serial story time thing.
Own the pun, Jeanie.
Yes, I know. I do.
Yeah.
I own it. I'm there.
Will
got it.
says it makes me want to explore Sherlock Holmes now. Yes, and I've read several of the Holmes stories, and they're great.
Oh,
I've read all of Agatha Christie. I started at a very young age, and I think I finished before I got out of high school because I was just Hercule Poirot was to me, just cut from the same cloth as Dupin, and I couldn't get enough. And now there's some authors that are writing in the same style as Agatha Christie. They're approved authors from her estate. And so I've read, let's see, I've looked at the shelf, 3 of them so far. And I'm actually, that's one of my like 5 books I'm reading right now is the Monogram Murders. But they're very well done. And it's like, we need someone to write in the style of Poe and create more of these Dupin stories. I think that would be fantastic.
Well, someone might do that in your contest.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be great. Yes. So if you are a poet, definitely, once we put the poetry contest out there, please submit a poem. Definitely. It'll launch April 1st. And I think everybody on here, I think we sent an invite to read or recite a poem. And so just, let us know what you want to do. Live or on video.
I'm already nervous, but yeah, I submitted mine.
Yeah, yes, I saw. And Micah did too.
And turn your artificial intelligence off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm having an issue with what I'm working on now where I have to determine what's artificial intelligence and if the person really wrote it. And it's a headache.
Oh yeah. My friend who's also a teacher went to a PD today that was talking about using AI to help them in the classroom by creating tests. And I went, "Are you kidding me?" And she goes, "Oh yeah." I said,
Yep.
"Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "I hate that."
Yeah.
Well, that's bad because AI, as we have determined, does more false than it does fact.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I told her. I said, the problem is that teachers will have to spend more time verifying that the information is correct than they would have put into actually doing it themselves, knowing it's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and even with other people that create tests, we still have to go through and they get things wrong.
Right. I will say this. I was approached by a company to write things as an English teacher for them to feed to AI to know what to write or how to say it or whatever. And I was like, nope, I'm not contributing. I'm not going to do it. I was going to say, Micah shared in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the movie, great movie. The murderer of the Rue Morgue is a human being, one Dr. Jekyll. And then he said, by the way, happy Raven Day. Yes, that was yesterday, and National Puzzle Day, both yesterday. And I call it National Poezel Day. Just saves time to one and all. Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I also remember that from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because I was thinking to myself, well, technically, would Dr. Jekyll truly be considered a human being when he was in his other form?
That's a good
Because,
that's a good point.
Yeah. I like that for the most part, but most of it, I was just like, me, whatever. Whatever.
All right. Any other thoughts on Rue Morgue?
Nope.
All right.
Not for me.
Well, this has been a great one to talk about. I think we went in a lot of different rabbit holes, which was very interesting. And Alex, thank you so much for being our special guest this evening. And we would love to have you come back when we do read the murder of Marie Roget. That would be awesome.
Thank you very, very much for having me. And if any of you want to listen to The Murders in the Rue Morgue, you can. I'm going to put it up on our website, a link to it, but you can just Google Poe and National Public Radio, and we're the very first hit, so you'll be able to find us right there.
Awesome.
Yeah. And you can actually come join us any other time you want to on
yeah,
Poe Unplugged. We'd be
absolutely.
happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So next month, we are going to be reading the poem The Sleeper. And A.A. Rubin is going to be joining us. He's going to be one of our Gothic guests for February. He was the first place winner of the adult category of the poetry contest last year. And so he's going to be a judge this year. And so is Dr. Jeff and Holly. And so he wanted to read, he actually wanted to read The Bells. And I'm like, we've already done that. So he picked The Sleeper, which is a good one. So they're all good. But, and that
I wouldn't go that far.
Do what?
Sorry. Wouldn't go that far.
Jeannie, I'm going to buy you a mummy. I'm going to buy you a mummy.
If I already have a voodoo doll, they would actually go really well together.
Yeah, and so Poe Unplugged next month will be February 27th. It is the last Tuesday of the month. So same Poe time, same Poe Zoom channel. So
same post station. Yes, same
Yes.
post station.
Yes, and Holly is going to be doing an interview with us in March. And she, if you haven't seen, her book came out January 19th on Poe's birthday. I've got February on my brain.
Oh.
And Eye of Athena. So check that out.
Yay!
Yeah.
All right.
you.
And definitely check out National Edgar Allan Poe Theater because they have fantastic work. So, all right. Well, thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank
See you next time.
Yes.
Woo!
See you
Thank
next
you.
month.
Good
night.
Y'all have
Bye.
a
Valentine's
Bye.
Day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All
Happy
right.
Valentine's Day. Yeah. Bye.
Yes.